I knew something was wrong the second I saw Chase Murrow's name pop up in my Monday morning calendar. No subject. Just 10:30, Conf RM 4B. When a board chair schedules a face-to-face without context, it's either a promotion or a setup, and I hadn't been promoted in 10 years. Before that meeting detonated my week, everything felt normal in that dead-eyed compliance way. I was halfway through my quarterly workforce certification review, 2,765 active, verified headcount. A little low for where we were supposed to be, but the numbers didn't lie. Payroll reports were clean, HRS logs checked out. A couple flagged temps mislabeled as full-timers, but I figured it was the usual, HR's intern clicking the wrong drop-down. "Morning, Elliot," Jasmine from HR mumbled as she passed me in the hallway, holding a box of donuts like it was a bomb. "Espresso machine still busted. I put in another ticket." "Of course it is," I muttered, flipping through a printout of misaligned onboarding forms. The one machine that requires no ethics still manages to break. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, but I did my job. And at 10 Rex, that used to mean something. I'd been the certifier of record since before we hired a single offshore contractor. I'd built our audit pipeline from scratch, line by line, because no one else would. And for a while, that shielded me, until suddenly, it didn't. By 9:45 a.m., I'd flagged 9 entries with missing verification docs. 3 were full-time workers I'd never seen on our Slack, with vague roles like logistics enhancement or CX ambassador. When I asked Jenna from Ops who G. Robbins was, she shrugged. "I think he's one of the remote guys." But his IP log showed no activity in 62 days. Still, I figured it was just noise. There's always some bloat, always a few ghosts, but by 10:30 I'd learned this wasn't about ghosts. This was about a body count. And hey, if you've made it this far, do me one favor. Subscribe to the channel and tap the like button. Seriously, 97% of people listen without subscribing, and every click helps this team keep telling these real deal stories that big firms would rather stay buried. Okay, back in. I stepped into Conf Room 4B to find Chase already seated, tapping something on his phone like I wasn't even there. Tanya Dorsey, our CFO, was next to him, her face doing that tight-lipped smile thing executives use when they've already made a decision they're about to pretend you helped make. "Elliot," Chase said, without looking up. "Glad you could make time." "My calendar is wide open when the board calls," I said, sitting down and placing my folder neatly on the table. "What's this about?" Chase finally looked up, smiled like I'd asked whether water was wet. "We're finalizing the credit facility, $380 million. Big step for 10 Rex. Investors are excited. Just need one last little checkbox, workforce verification." Tanya slid a glossy sheet across the table. "We're reporting 3,200 headcount. Can you sign off by Friday?" My pulse didn't spike. My hands didn't shake. I just stared at the number, then said evenly, "We don't have 3,200 employees." Chase's smile thinned. "Not today, maybe, but the model's based on expansion. You know how these things work, forward-looking projections." "That's not what the form is for," I replied. "It's a current state certification, under penalty of perjury." He waved a hand like I was quoting a parking ticket. "Come on, Elliot, don't be difficult. Every company pads a little. It's understood." "No," I said flatly. "It's not." Tanya leaned in. "We've already sent preliminary docs to the lender. Your name's listed as the certifier. All we're asking is for you to align." I blinked. "You used my name before I signed?" There was a pause. A quiet one. The kind that confirms what you already knew. Chase leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We need this loan. Everyone's worked hard to get here. Don't throw a wrench in it now." That's when I knew. This wasn't about one number. This was about a line I wasn't supposed to see, and they expected me to cross it, quietly. I nodded once, folded the sheet, slid it back across the table. "I'll get back to you." Then I left the room. Back at my desk, I opened the compliance log and pulled every headcount variance from the last 3 quarters. I started digging. Not because I was curious, but because someone had already dug the hole. They were just waiting for me to fall in. Tuesday morning hit like wet cement. My inbox was bloated with subject lines like "reconfirm" and "quick tweak before you submit." All vague enough to mean nothing, yet loud enough to reek of coordination. One from Tanya read simply, "Let's align." No punctuation, just corporate condescension in Arial 11. Then came another calendar bomb, workforce roll-up, Urgent. 8:30 a.m. Zoom. Required. The camera blinked on, and there they were, Chase, Tanya, and a finance director I barely recognized. Probably flown in to nod at the right moments. Tanya had that breathless, caffeinated look of someone about to sell you something you didn't want. And Chase looked like he always did. Tanned, bored, and already counting the money. We're just doing a quick pulse check, Tanya started. Need your eyes on the final headcount figures so we can move the lender packet forward. I pulled up the dashboard, scrolled through the staff roster. My figures show 2,765. Active, verified. I've got the logs. Chase chuckled, one of those performative CEO laughs designed to make you feel like a child at a dinner table. Come on, Elliot, that's the technical number. You know how growth works. Contracts coming in, teams expanding. It's fluid. That's not how certification works, I said. It's not a projection. It's an attestation of current state. The form literally says, as of date. Tanya jumped in. We've already modeled for 3,200. That's the number the bank needs to see. It positions us right above the next loan bracket. Better rate, more flexibility. I looked at her, then him, then the finance guy who hadn't blinked once. You're asking me to say we have 435 more employees than we do. Chase leaned in, voice low and oily. I'm asking you not to be difficult. Everyone does this. It's not fraud, it's narrative alignment. We're not saying those workers don't exist. We're saying they will. Soon. I stared at him, stunned by how easily he bent reality to convenience. You're asking me to certify ghosts. No, he snapped, smile gone. I'm asking you to be a team player. We don't have time to play semantic games. This facility is key to expansion. We've already given headcount figures to the lender. My stomach dropped. You submitted numbers before I signed? Preliminary numbers, Tanya clarified, as if that word would be my security blanket. I didn't verify those. Well, that's what today is about, Chase said. Let's get it buttoned up. I opened my folder, pulled out the certification form, and pointed to one line. All data certified as materially accurate to the best of signatories' knowledge. You want me to perjure myself. Don't be dramatic, Tanya sighed. It's standard. No one audits this, and if they do, we've got contingency language. Chase stood now, voice firmer. You've been good at your job, Elliot. Steady, diligent, but we need alignment, not barriers. Sign off and we move forward. Otherwise... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Otherwise, you're out. Otherwise, you're the problem. Otherwise, your 20-year history of integrity gets rewritten as obstinance. And they'd smile while doing it. I closed the folder. I'll get back to you. The Zoom ended. No goodbyes. Back at my desk, I reopened the raw HR export. This time, I wasn't scanning for errors. I was building a case. A firewall. Because if they were going to make me the villain, I'd make sure the receipts outlived the story they tried to write. I flagged every part-time and temp tagged as FT at permanent. 73. I cross-checked with system access logs. 21 hadn't logged in for over 30 days. 9 had never logged in at all. Then I found something worse. 4 entries with duplicate social security numbers but different names. I froze. That wasn't bloat. That was rot. This wasn't rounding up. This was a fantasy, a paper-thin fable built for investors, held together by the assumption that I'd fall in line. They picked the wrong name and the wrong file. By Wednesday, silence had become the loudest answer I was getting. I'd sent 3 emails by noon, one to Jenna in HR. Can you confirm employment status on the following 73 entries? No reply. One to legal. Need clarification on liability language for workforce certifications, urgently. Auto reply. One to internal audit, flagged high priority. Please advise whether headcount adjustments have been formally logged or approved. Read receipt. Nothing else. My desk, always orderly, looked like a crime scene. I had spreadsheets layered with color-coded anomalies, login timestamps, Form I-9 gaps, access trail summaries for workers who existed only in finance projections, and Chase's glossy pitch decks. Every red cell felt like a lit fuse. At 2:07 p.m., my calendar pinged. New invite. Subject line. Resolution discussion. No agenda. No prep docs. Just a 3 p.m. slot with Tanya, Chase, and the same quiet finance director who never made eye contact. Required, of course. I stared at the screen for a long time, then stood up, went to the break room, poured a coffee that tasted like scorched regret, and walked the long way back to my desk. I knew what was coming. At 2:59, I clicked join. Chase started before the camera even adjusted. Thanks for making time, Elliot. Let's get right to it. Tanya chimed in, all sugar and starch. We want to make sure you're feeling supported. We understand your concerns, but at this stage, we really need to align and move forward. Supported? I asked. I've emailed 3 departments, no one's responded, and I just found 2 more duplicate entries in HRS, both assigned to full-time salaried slots. One of them is listed as working in both Atlanta and Singapore, same name, same ID, but 2 salaries. Chase's smile didn't even flinch. Data sync issues, we've had those before. Let's not get lost in the weeds. This isn't weeds, I snapped. It's a jungle. You're reporting headcount that doesn't exist and tying it to a $380 million credit facility. Tanya's tone sharpened. The board expects alignment on this, Elliot. The CFO has already submitted the headcount summary to the lender. I stopped breathing for a second. Submitted? With what name on the certifier line? She looked down, then back up. Yours. Pending signature. That was it. The whole game. They'd already branded me the signature before I'd even agreed to hold the pen. A fiction written in ink they assumed I'd never question. You're listing me as the verifier, I said quietly, on a document I haven't signed, for numbers I've already disputed. Chase leaned in. Don't make this difficult. That line hit harder than it should have. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a threat dressed up in corporate tone. I looked between them. Chase, the strategist, Tanya, the fixer, and the finance guy still quiet, like he was watching a formality play out. You understand what you're asking me to do, right? I said. To commit certification fraud, to risk federal liability, because you want better optics on a balance sheet. No one's asking for fraud, Tanya said tightly. We're asking for perspective, for flexibility. It's a checkbox, Chase added, a standard part of the process. You're blowing this out of proportion. And what happens, I asked, when the lender asks for verification logs, or payroll metadata, or time-stamped access audits? Chase shrugged. We're not at that point. But we will be, Tanya sighed. This is the hill you want to die on? I paused. No, but it might be the hill where your deal dies. They didn't like that. The call ended 5 minutes later. No resolution, no compromise, just a quiet, corporate standoff. Back at my desk, I stared at the system, at the dashboard, at the fake numbers tied to my very real name, and I realized I wasn't being asked to approve. I was being offered complicity. The only question now was how I'd decline, and how loud the paper trail would be when I did. The next morning, I did what they were counting on me not doing. I opened the lender agreement, not the highlights slide, not the pre-chewed summary from legal, the full, unabridged, 168-page contract, complete with addenda, signature appendices, and 2 pages of indemnification language that could give a seasoned attorney acid reflux. I read it. Twice. And buried in Section 9D, sandwiched between indemnity clauses and boilerplate indemnification language, I found it. All workforce attestations and associated headcount certifications shall be true and materially accurate to the best knowledge of the designated officer. Certification shall be treated as legally binding under penalty of perjury and subject to audit upon lender request. I sat back in my chair, exhaled through my nose, and whispered, well, there it is. They weren't just asking for alignment. They were asking for felony risk. They wanted my name, my title, my signature, and my blindfold. Too bad I read the fine print. Every time. By noon, I drafted an internal memo, not a rant, not an accusation, just a simple, bulletproof record. Summary of the certification clause. Headcount discrepancy versus. Reported number. HRS anomalies with logs. Duplicate Social Security entries, my refusal to sign based on Clause 9D. I included screenshots, version timestamps, and a summary line that read, if this certification is submitted with my name attached, it will constitute a misrepresentation of material fact as defined in Section 9D of the lender agreement, and I will escalate externally if necessary. I sent it to legal, CC'd Tanya, BCC'd my personal email, of course, and then Nothing. No reply. No thanks for flagging. Not even a bounce back. It sat there, unread, like a bomb waiting for someone to trip over the fuse. By 3:00 p.m., I was deep in the HRIS logs, not just reviewing entries, but combing through the audit trail. Who changed what and when? Normally, it's interns or HR associates doing entry cleanup, but not this time. The edits had been manual, and they all came from one user, FDR Griffin, finance director, a guy I'd never once seen near a headcount meeting. He'd overridden classification codes on 97 records, switched PT contract to FT employee, changed effective dates, even tweaked 2 location fields to make remote workers appear US-based for lender optics. It wasn't sloppiness, it was choreography. Intentional, quiet, and just sloppy enough to look like an accident, until you lined them up and saw the pattern. I exported everything, stored it in a new folder marked Audit Fallback. Then I opened a blank doc. At the top, I typed, Exit Interview, green, E. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. But I knew now this wouldn't end in a conversation. It would end in a record. A permanent one, with names, dates, and digital fingerprints they couldn't erase. Friday morning, I came in early. Not to work, not to make peace, just to finish what they didn't think I had the stomach to start. I'd already cleared my personal files, wiped my bookmarks, and backed up my final folder. Secure, encrypted, labeled with boring names no one in IT would blink at. I left behind only what mattered, the evidence. At 7:42 a.m., I submitted my formal resignation. No drama, no long goodbye. Just, to whom it may concern, effective immediately, I resign from my position as Workforce Compliance Certifier at Tenrex Inc. This decision is made in good conscience and is irrevocable. Respectfully, Elliot Green. Attached were 2 documents, a PDF of the signed resignation letter and a file labeled Exit Interview Green E. That second one, that's where I lit the match. It wasn't a rant. I don't do catharsis in Word format. It was structured like a compliance audit. Bullet points, cross-referenced entries, internal hyperlinks, and full chain of custody notations. Date of initial meeting with Chase and Tanya. Summary of verbal directive to align numbers. Clause 9D from the lender agreement, bolded, direct quotes from Chase. Don't make this difficult. Everyone does it. A copy of my memo to legal with time of submission and recipients. HRS, audit trail log showing manual recoding by Finance Director R. Griffin. List of 97 employee records altered without re-verification. Snapshot of duplicated SSNs and conflicting IP login reports. Screenshots of HRES access timestamps tied to falsified records. The preliminary headcount form with my name already listed as certifier. A final statement of non-consent. Then I added one more section, just 4 lines. I did not authorize the use of my name or title on any submission related to the lender headcount certification. Any such use constitutes misrepresentation. I am filing this document under Company Policy Article 4.3.2, Exit Interview Archival, Legal Archive Status. I have marked this file permanent and enabled the audit lock timestamp. Digital signature applied. Timestamp 7:58 a.m. By 8:03, I uploaded it to the HRIS, selected Permanent Record Legal Archive, and toggled the audit lock, a rarely used internal flag designed for post-termination legal hold. Once flagged, it requires General Counsel authorization to delete or alter, and even if they tried, the audit trail would log it forever. I left a copy in legal's shared drive, another in the compliance audit folder, and one more, encrypted, sent to my personal address with a checksum receipt for chain of custody proof. At 8:19, I stood up, looked at the monitor one last time. My name still sat on the certifier line of that loan sheet. I didn't scream, I didn't storm out, I just left my badge on the desk and wrote one sentence on a sticky note next to my keyboard. You asked for alignment, I gave you accountability. Then I walked out. No goodbyes, no turning back. Because while Chase was busy playing Empire Builder and Tanya was oiling the hinges on every door between her and a bonus, they forgot the one thing that matters more than image and compliance, the record. And now, it had teeth. 2 weeks after I walked out, Tenrex posted a glossy LinkedIn announcement. Excited to share we've secured a $380 million credit facility to fuel our global expansion. There were champagne flutes in the header image. Tanya front and center, smiling like she'd just solved world hunger with a spreadsheet. Chase stood just behind her, blazer sharp, teeth sharper. The post got 2,300 likes. That Monday, a few people were promoted. 2 new directors were announced. A press release boasted record-setting operational efficiency and full workforce validation. My name, of course, was nowhere, but something else was. In the background, silent and cold as black ice, came a request. The lender had flagged inconsistencies. It started as a routine cross-check. Payroll figures didn't align cleanly with the certified headcount. The FTE ratios weren't matching the comp summaries. One set of documents showed 3,212 employees. Another, 2,779. That might have slid if it weren't for a few discrepancies in benefits enrollment dates and contractor invoice overlaps. Things no one notices unless they go looking. But someone did. A small forensic team, external auditors retained by the lender, reached out to Tenrex's legal team with a formal document request. Their wording was precise. Please provide all workforce verification logs, internal certifications, and any documented objections or exceptions related to headcount reporting during the certification period. The phrase documented objections landed like a nail through a windshield. Suddenly, General Counsel wasn't smiling, because he knew what that meant. He logged into the HRIS, navigated to the legal archive, and there it was, my exit file, untouched, locked, stamped, digitally signed, tied to Policy Article 4.3.2, with the audit lock still intact. He clicked it. Every page loaded, every memo, every timestamp, every log of unauthorized edits. And at the top of page 2, in bold, this discrepancy violates the certifier clause of Section 9D. I will not sign false data. This file is submitted under protest as a formal objection. My name, my signature, my warning. The file wasn't buried, it wasn't misplaced. It was exactly where it was supposed to be, waiting. Like a quiet tripwire someone had decided to tiptoe past, assuming it was a loose cable. Until now. From what I heard later, the room went silent when the file surfaced. Legal didn't respond immediately. They stalled, asked for time to compile supplemental materials. But you don't stall a forensic team trained to spot hesitation like a shark smells blood. So the auditors replied with a second request, this time sharper. Confirm whether any material objections were logged, documented, or escalated by the designated certifier prior to loan finalization. We have evidence that the listed certifier did not participate in final approval. That's when the fuse lit. My name had resurfaced without me lifting a finger. No speech, no fight, just my signature in the right place at the wrong time. For them, they thought I was gone. Erased. A footnote. Turns out, I was the footnote the whole chapter hinged on. When legal finally unlocked the HRIS archive, they didn't just find my file, they found a loaded weapon. By policy, anything flagged permanent legal archive triggers a secondary verification step. Not just who accessed it, but when, where, and why. It took their compliance liaison nearly 30 minutes to bypass the hold, time they didn't have, while the auditors waited downstairs with sharpened questions and a timeline that didn't line up. Inside the folder were 3 documents. 2 they expected, 1 they didn't. The first, my exit interview file, unedited, signed, timestamped. A digital keystone with every claim backed by system metadata and log ID references. At the top, in clean Helvetica, was the final line they couldn't redact. This discrepancy violates the certifier clause of Section 9D. I will not sign false data. It was dated, digitally locked, and included a short index of attachments, memo to legal, re 9D, clause risk, 0403, HRS audit trail, finance edits to worker classifications, addendum, internal comms, pre-filing adjustments, unreleased. That third one, that's where the ground gave out. Because addendum wasn't just a file, it was a buried memo, an internal email thread between Tanya, Chase, and R. Griffin from Finance dated 2 days before the lender submission. Subject line, Certifier Alignment Strategy. The contents weren't even subtle. Prelim numbers sent with Elliot listed. We'll circle back with him after. If he resists, escalate to resolution discussion. Don't delay. Lender needs 3,000 plus on paper. We can clean back-end post-disbursement. He's old school, say everyone does it, and frame as standard ops. The words were casual, brutal, smug. And nowhere in the loan submission packet had that thread been disclosed, because it wasn't supposed to exist. But I'd seen it, and I'd attached it, without noise, without warning, without asking permission. When the auditors read it, they asked one question first. Was this document disclosed as part of your submission? General counsel didn't answer, not right away. He just stared at the page, face draining like a sink someone forgot to plug. Then came the second question. Who else had access to this exchange prior to submission? Legal stammered something about internal confidentiality, about strategy, about ambiguity in scope. But the auditors didn't care about scope. They cared about intent, and they had it, right there, in a signed file, in a locked archive, from the person whose name they'd used without consent. Mine. They called it a material contradiction. They paused the next funding disbursement within the hour. Chase was unreachable. Tanya in meetings. The rest of the exec team began a quiet internal scramble. Phone calls, document revisions, whispered strategy sessions behind half-closed doors. But it was too late. The lie had already been printed, indexed, time-stamped, flagged by the very system they thought no one ever checked. Somewhere in a downtown boardroom, a monitor flickered with the header of my exit file. Underneath, a note from the auditors. This documentation materially contradicts prior certifications. External counsel advised. I wasn't in the room. I didn't need to be. My signature did all the talking. Tenrex's executive conference room wasn't built for shame. It was built for control. Glass walls, polished concrete floors, a 12-foot reclaimed wood table shipped in from Oregon, meant to scream permanence. But when the lender's audit team arrived that Thursday morning, permanence took on a different tone. General counsel Mark Westridge had been rehearsing his defense all night. Phrases like interpretive misalignment and procedural ambiguity were locked and loaded. He even had a tabbed binder prepped, color-coded to give the illusion of transparency. Legal theater at its finest. The lead forensic auditor was a woman named Cara Delaney, not flashy, not loud, just the kind of sharp quiet that slices deeper than volume. She sat at the far end of the table, flipping through my exit file with surgical calm. Mark cleared his throat and started. Yes, we've reviewed the document in question. While it's unfortunate Mr. Green felt the need to leave under protest, we believe his concerns were rooted in a misinterpretation of the certification language, which Cara held up a hand. Didn't even look at him. This file contains legally material disclosure under signature, she said. It directly contradicts your submitted certification to us, specifically the attestation of current, accurate workforce headcount. Mark froze mid-sentence. Cara closed the folder gently. Mr. Green documented specific instances of headcount inflation. He cited Clause 9D directly. He flagged duplicate records, manual recoding, and noted that his name was attached without consent. Mark inhaled sharply, as if hoping oxygen might offer a rebuttal. Then, slowly, he exhaled and lowered his head. He didn't argue, he didn't reframe, because he knew. The silence in the room was cold and elastic. You could almost hear chairs creaking under the weight of shifting blame. Another auditor, this one from Risk Analysis, spoke next. We've paused further disbursement effective immediately. This file constitutes sufficient cause for an external compliance review. You'll receive the scope of our investigation by end of day. Is that necessary? Tanya asked, voice brittle from the doorway. She wasn't supposed to be in the meeting, but no one stopped her. Cara didn't even look her way. You submitted a certification that used a signature you didn't obtain over data you didn't verify, while actively concealing material internal objections. Mark tried to regain ground. We believed Mr. Green's departure resolved the concern. Cara's eyebrow twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. You misunderstood his silence. He didn't walk away. He documented the fire and made sure the alarms worked. Mark reached for his water glass and missed. His hand shook, just slightly, as he placed it back down without drinking. By noon, the board was informed. By 3:00 p.m., all executive sessions were closed to non-directors. And by nightfall, the internal chat logs lit up. Emergency compliance protocols initiated. Outside counsel retained. Investor relations requested talking points in the event of media inquiries. No one said my name out loud, but it was on every screen, every memo, every whispered corner conversation. They'd built a castle on padded numbers and assumed I'd either sign or disappear. Instead, I left a mine under the foundation. And now, they'd just stepped on it. The report came out on a Wednesday. Tenrex tried to bury it under the usual PR fog: internal audit cooperation, leadership realignment, commitment to transparency. But no buzzword could soften the impact of what the lender's review actually said. At the top of page 7, in a box bordered with red, primary trigger event, exit interview, green, E. They didn't bother sugarcoating it. The fraud had been avoidable. The warning had been internal, and the only person who flagged it had already walked out the front door while everyone else was still busy congratulating each other for stealing second base without ever stepping up to bat. By Friday, 3 board members had stepped down. Tanya Dorsey, the CFO, was on leave, and Chase Murrow, the voice of everybody pads the numbers, was suddenly unreachable. His last LinkedIn post, a recycled quote about founder grit, quietly vanished sometime around 2 a.m. that morning. Tenrex issued a public statement, something about revisiting internal controls and strengthening organizational transparency protocols. They didn't mention the fact that the lender had frozen half the second tranche of the $380 million deal. They didn't mention me either, but everyone knew. Word traveled like it always does. From what I was told, the desk I used to sit at on 14 West, far right near the frosted glass, remained empty for weeks. Some poor temp tried to take it over but left after 2 days. Said the screen wouldn't stop flashing system error logs from a shared compliance drive nobody could access anymore. But someone left a note. Taped to the monitor, handwritten in blue ink, signatures mean something. I never found out who wrote it. I didn't ask. By then, I was in a small town 2 states over. A rented place on the coast where the air smelled like cedar and coffee didn't cost $8 just because someone drew a leaf in the foam. I read the final report over black drip from a chipped mug, wrapped in a wool blanket that didn't match anything in the house. Outside, the ocean was low and quiet, kind of like the victory. On the last page of the report, buried in the appendix, was a short summary under compliance recommendations, external resources. It listed one name, mine. A week later, I got a message through LinkedIn from someone at the lender's office. Mr. Green, we'd be honored to bring you on as a consultant for our forensic division, specializing in early detection and reporting integrity. Please let us know if you're open to a conversation. I stared at the message for a while. Then I hit mark as read and let it be. I didn't need the job, or the title, or another plaque that would end up boxed in a closet. I'd already done my part. Some people climb the ladder, others hold the base steady. Me? I was the line in the contract, the clause they forgot to read, and the signature they shouldn't have borrowed.